Starfall Encounter Commander Elias Reed stood at the observation deck of Poseidon Base, Earth's premier underwater research station nestled deep in the Pacific. The transparent dome offered a panoramic view of the midnight blue waters where bioluminescent creatures drifted like living stars. Tonight, however, his attention was fixed on the incoming vessel cutting through the ocean from above. "Commander, the Lumarian ambassador's shuttle is entering Earth's atmosphere," his communication officer reported. "ETA 15 minutes. Elias nodded, adjusting his Navy uniform. "Prepare the diplomatic quarters. And Jenkins? Make sure the salinity and pressure settings are calibrated to Lumarian physiology." This assignment had come directly from Earth Union Command, Escort, and Protect. Ambassador Nyera of Lumaria during negotiations for rare mineral rights. The Lumarians were a secretive species, aquatic humanoids who rarely ventured beyond their water world. Elias had only seen holograms of their kind, slender figures with purple-hued skin that seemed to shimmer with internal light. A sudden alert blared through the station. The shuttle was descending too rapidly, its trajectory erratic. "Sir, the vessel's stabilizers have failed," Jenkins shouted. "They're going to crash into the reef sector." Elias sprang into action. "Deploy rescue submersibles. I want a team ready to extract survivors." Within minutes, Elias piloted the lead rescue craft toward a trail of bubbles and debris. The Lumarian shuttle had partially embedded itself in the coral reef 3 kilometers from the base. Its hull was breached, water flooding the compartments. As they approached, something moved within the wreckage, a figure swimming with surprising grace despite the chaotic currents. Elias maneuvered closer, activating the external lights. The beam illuminated her, a Lumarian female with skin the color of twilight violet. Delicate patterns along her arms and face emitted a soft glow that pulsed with her movements. Her eyes were large and iridescent, catching the light like black opals. She wore a form-fitting bodysuit that seemed woven from living material, adapting to the water pressure around her. Elias opened the submersible's hatch, flooding the small chamber. His specialized diving gear activated automatically as he swam toward the Lumarian. "Ambassador Nyera?" he called through his communication device. She tilted her head, studying him with those remarkable eyes. When she spoke, her voice resonated directly in his mind, melodic and tinged with amusement. "I believe I've made quite the entrance, haven't I, Commander?" Despite himself, Elias smiled behind his breathing apparatus. "Not exactly the diplomatic arrival we planned, Ambassador." "Please, call me Nyera." Her mental voice softened as she glided closer, close enough that he could see the subtle movements of gills along her neck. "My shuttle pilots perished in the crash. An equipment malfunction, perhaps sabotage." Elias felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ocean depths. "You suspect sabotage? From which faction?" "There are many who don't wish for Lumaria to open relations with Earth," she replied, her luminous patterns dimming slightly. "My presence here threatens centuries of isolation." Back at Poseidon Base, the medical team examined Nyera while Elias reported the incident to Earth Command. When he returned to the infirmary, she was standing by the viewing window, watching marine life swirl around the base. "Commander Reed," she said, turning to face him. Her voice, now spoken aloud in the air-filled room, carried a musical lilt. "It seems I owe you my life." "Just doing my duty, Ambassador." Her lips curved into a subtle smile. "Then I hope your duty includes showing me Earth's oceans. I've traveled across 12 star systems to see them." Something in her gaze made Elias momentarily forget protocol. "The official tour begins tomorrow, but I could show you the bioluminescent garden tonight. It reminds me of your—" He hesitated. "Your markings." Nyera's patterns brightened, casting a violet glow across her face. "I would like that very much, Commander." As they walked through the corridor, neither noticed the surveillance drone tracking their movements, nor the encrypted transmission being sent to parties unknown, reporting that the first phase of the plan had succeeded. Depths of trust, the bioluminescent garden was Poseidon Base's crown jewel, an enclosed habitat where Earth's rarest glowing marine species thrived alongside carefully transplanted alien flora. As Elias guided Nyera through the winding glass tunnels, her expression transformed from diplomatic composure to childlike wonder. These creatures, she whispered, pressing her palm against the glass where a school of luminous jellyfish pulsed in rhythm. They sing with light just as my people do. Elias watched her purple skin reflect the blues and greens of the garden. Your people communicate through bioluminescence? Among other means. Naira's own markings rippled with subtle patterns. Light speech is for intimacy and emotion. Words are for less important matters. Her eyes met his with unexpected directness. On Lumaria, one's light patterns reveal truths that words can conceal. Then I must be an open book to you, Elias said. Humans don't have the advantage of hiding our reactions. You hide in other ways, Commander. Her fingers traced patterns in the condensation on the glass. Your species masks feelings behind protocol and duty. Even now, you stand at a precise diplomatic distance from me. Elias hadn't realized he'd been maintaining a measured space between them until she mentioned it. He relaxed his posture, moving a half-step closer. Is this better, Ambassador? Her markings brightened. Nearer, she corrected. And yes. Their tour continued to the garden's heart, where a domed ceiling revealed the dark ocean above. Distant lights from the surface flickered like inverted stars. May I share something from my world? Neera asked, suddenly hesitant. When Elias nodded, she dimmed the room's illumination panels with a control gesture, then closed her eyes in concentration. Gradually, the patterns across her skin intensified until they became intricate constellations of purple light, pulsing in complex sequences. This is my true name, she explained, her voice barely audible over the water filtering through the tanks. Not the sound Neera, but this pattern of light. Elias stood transfixed. The display was intimate, beautiful in ways he couldn't articulate. I'm honored, he said finally, knowing the words were inadequate. The moment shattered as alarms blared throughout the base. Elias's communicator activated immediately. Commander! Seismic activity detected near the southern ridge. All personnel to emergency stations. The tremor struck with startling force. Display tanks cracked, water cascading across the floor as Elias pulled Naira toward the exit. They barely reached the corridor when the lights failed, plunging them into darkness broken only by the purple glow of Naira's skin. Hours later, after emergency systems were restored and damage control teams dispatched, Elias found Naira standing outside her assigned quarters, a subtle trembling visible in her slender frame. Ambassador, is everything all right? She turned, her markings dimmed to near darkness. My quarters were damaged, but it's not that... She hesitated, seeming uncharacteristically vulnerable. Lumarians don't endure isolation well, especially in darkness. On my world, we sleep in communal pools, our light patterns synchronized. Understanding dawned. You haven't slept since arriving. I cannot. Not alone. The admission seemed to cost her considerable pride. Elias considered his options, all of them crossing professional boundaries. My quarters weren't affected by the tremor, he said finally. You're welcome to use them while repairs are made. He intended to offer his room while finding alternate accommodations for himself, but Neera misunderstood, or perhaps understood something deeper than his words. That night, Elias returned from his emergency duties to find Neera asleep in his quarters, her body emitting a soft, pulsing glow that filled the room with gentle violet light. Rather than wake her, he settled into a chair, intending to rest briefly before finding another place to sleep. He didn't realize he had dozed off until he felt a cool touch on his arm. Neera stood before him, her eyes reflecting starlight that wasn't there. You need rest too, Commander, she whispered. I'll find another cabin, he started to say, but she shook her head. On Lumaria, light is shared freely among trusted ones. She extended her hand. Do you trust me, Elias Reed? As she led him to his own bed, Elias knew protocol demanded refusal. But something older than protocol, something about her light calling to something unnamed within himself, made him accept her offered hand instead. Forbidden currents. You entered my dream tide, Neera said the next morning, her voice holding equal measures of surprise and reverence. Elias, preparing for the day's diplomatic meetings, paused. Your what? Dream tide. the shared consciousness Lumarians experience during sleep. She studied him with newfound fascination. No non-Lumarian has ever manifested in another's dream tide before. The previous night's dream came rushing back, swimming through violet waters where thoughts became visible currents, where he had somehow known Nira's presence despite never seeing her. They had explored memories together. Her childhood in Lumaria's deep crystal cities, his years training among Earth's orbital platforms. That was real? Elias asked, struggling to process the implications. I thought it was just a vivid dream. It was both. Nira's markings formed patterns he was beginning to recognize as excitement. Our minds synchronized. This is. She searched for words. This is unprecedented. Before Elias could respond, his communicator chimed with a priority. Message. Commander Reed, report to Central Operations immediately. Director Harlow waited with 2 Security Division officers, her expression severe beneath cropped gray hair. Commander, explain your unauthorized intimacy with the Lumarian ambassador. Elias maintained his composure despite the accusation. Director, I provided emergency accommodations following yesterday's seismic event. Our monitoring systems recorded 2 biosignatures in your quarters throughout the night. The ambassador's quarters suffered minimal damage, certainly not enough to warrant shared sleeping arrangements. Harlow slid a datapad across the table. Perhaps more concerning are these readings showing synchronized brainwave patterns between you and the ambassador. Elias glanced at the neural scans, recognizing the implications immediately. Their dream-tide connection had been monitored. Director, there are aspects of Lumarian physiology not covered in our briefings. Aspects that coincidentally align with old Earth tales of seduction by alien enchantresses? Harlow interrupted. The timing is suspicious, Commander. Critical? Negotiations beginning, and suddenly our chief security officer is compromised by unexplained physiological aspects. You're suggesting the ambassador is manipulating me? I'm suggesting you've been removed from objective judgment where she's concerned. Harlow's voice softened marginally. You're relieved of diplomatic escort duties effective immediately. Lieutenant Chen will assume responsibility for the ambassador. Nira found him later in the research library, reviewing everything available on Lumarian psychology, which amounted to frustratingly little. Your superiors fear me, she stated without preamble, sliding into the seat beside him. They fear what they don't understand, Elias corrected. As do I, frankly. This dream-tide connection is sacred among my people. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Shared dream tides typically occur only between life-bonded pairs. The implication hung between them, neither willing to address it directly. Director Harlow believes you're using some form of psychic influence, Elias said finally. Nira's markings darkened with what he now recognized as indignation. Impossible. Dreamtide cannot be forced. It must be mutual resonance. She hesitated. Elias, I must tell you something. My presence here isn't solely diplomatic. Before she could elaborate, Lieutenant Chen appeared at the library entrance. Ambassador, your presence is requested in Communication Center Alpha, a priority transmission from Lumaria. Nira rose, her expression troubled. We'll continue this conversation, she promised Elias, before following Chen. That evening, Elias received an encrypted message on his personal communicator. The Northern Observation Dome. Midnight. Come alone. Despite knowing it might further compromise his position, Elias found himself walking through deserted corridors at midnight. The observation dome was dark, save for the blue emergency lighting along the floor. Through the transparent ceiling, Earth's moon cast rippled light through the ocean surface far above. I leave tomorrow. Nira's voice came from the shadows before she stepped into view. Her skin was dimmed to its lowest luminosity, barely distinguishable from the darkness. What? The negotiations aren't scheduled to conclude for another week. The transmission was from the Lumarian Council. They're recalling me immediately." Her voice trembled slightly. "They know about our Dreamtide connection. How could they possibly? Because I was promised to another." The words fell between them like stones. A political union with the Vortex Collective's ambassador. The Dreamtide was meant for him, not a human commander. As Elias absorbed this revelation, Naira moved closer, her markings gradually brightening until they illuminated the space between them with violet light. "I've lived my life as a diplomatic instrument," she whispered, "until the Dreamtide showed me what connection truly means." She reached for his hand, her cool fingers interlacing with his. "One night remains before my transport arrives. Will you share the Dreamtide with me again, Elias Reed?" As her light patterns formed what he now recognized as his name, Elias knew his answer would change everything, for both of them, and perhaps for their worlds. Retry UB4 to 5 parts. Let me complete the story with parts 4 and 5. Tidal pull, their final night together transformed everything. In the Dreamtide, barriers between their minds dissolved completely, Elias experiencing the weight of royal expectation that had shaped Naira's existence, while she witnessed his lifelong struggle between duty and personal desire. Within that shared consciousness, they made a decision that would reverberate across star systems. Morning arrived with the harsh inevitability of separation. Naira's transport vessel hovered above Poseidon Base, its retrieval shuttle already descending through the waters. In her quarters, Elias watched her prepare for departure, memorizing every detail: the precise shade of her violet skin, the constellation-like patterns of her markings, the graceful movements that betrayed her aquatic heritage. "You understand what I risk by returning," she said, securing diplomatic documents into a waterproof case. "The Lumarian Council will sense our connection immediately. Dreamtide bonds cannot be hidden." Elias nodded. "And this arranged union with the Vortex Collective is vital for my people's defense systems," Naira finished. "The collective controls the gravitational stabilizers that protect our oceans from Lumaria's erratic moons." Her markings dimmed to a mournful purple. "I've known since childhood this would be my fate. There must be alternatives, trade agreements, technology exchanges. The Council has spent decades exploring options." She touched his face, her cool fingers tracing the contours of his jaw. "Some sacrifices are necessary for survival." A communication alert interrupted them. The retrieval shuttle had docked. Their time had ended. At the airlock, surrounded by Poseidon Base officials, their farewell remained rigidly formal. Director Harlow watched with undisguised relief as Naira stepped toward the Lumarian vessel. "Commander Reed," Naira said, her voice carrying the practiced tone of diplomatic closure, "your hospitality has been exemplary." "Safe journey, Ambassador," he replied, maintaining the required distance between them. Only in the final moment, as she turned to board, did her markings flare briefly with the light pattern that represented his name, visible to him alone. Then she was gone, the shuttle doors sealing behind her. Elias endured 3 days of debriefings and subtle interrogations about his compromised judgment before making his decision. On the 4th day, as Poseidon Base prepared for the arrival of Vortex Collective representatives, he requisitioned an atmospheric submarine under the pretense of security reconnaissance. Lieutenant Chen intercepted him at the launch bay. "Unusual timing for a patrol, Commander," she observed, studying the provisions he'd loaded aboard the small vessel. "Director's orders," Elias lied, not meeting her eyes. "Checking perimeter defenses before the Vortex delegation arrives." Chen's expression revealed her disbelief. "The coordinates already programmed into your navigation system lead to the Mariana space elevator." Elias said nothing, knowing denial was pointless. To his surprise, Chen stepped closer, lowering her voice. The Vortex representatives arrived early at the diplomatic orbital station. They're not what we expected, sir. She hesitated. They've requested extensive modifications to the ambassador's quarters. Modifications suggesting an environment incompatible with Lumarian physiology. What kind of modifications? Extreme pressure chambers. Caustic atmospheric compounds. Chen's professional demeanor cracked slightly. Commander, whatever they're planning for Ambassador Naira, it doesn't appear to be a union between equals. Elias absorbed this information, his resolve hardening. You could stop me, Lieutenant. I could, she agreed, then stepped aside. But the submarine's diagnostic cycle will take 30 minutes to complete before anyone notices it's missing. Officially, I never saw you here. Within hours, Elias's vessel surfaced at the base of the Mariana Space Elevator, the massive carbon nanotube structure that connected Earth's deepest ocean point to geosynchronous orbit. Using his military credentials, he secured passage on an ascending cargo platform, leaving Earth behind without a backward glance. Convergent Shores Lumeria appeared first as a shimmering blue sphere, its surface completely covered by oceans of varying depths. Only as the transport ship descended through cloud layers did Elias glimpse the massive crystalline structures rising from the waters, cities built by an aquatic civilization that had mastered both water and air. The capital city, Thalassia, emerged from the mists like a dream materialized, towering spires of living crystal that constantly shifted form, connected by translucent bridges where Lumarians moved in graceful synchronicity. Luminous vessels darted between buildings, leaving trails of light that dissipated slowly in the moisture-laden air. Elias's unauthorized arrival triggered immediate security protocols. Within moments of docking, he was surrounded by Lumarian guards, whose skin bore militant red-purple markings. They escorted him without explanation through a labyrinth of corridors that gradually descended below the ocean's surface. The council chamber was a vast underwater dome where 13 elders sat in a semicircle, their ancient forms distinguished by elaborate light patterns that constantly flowed across their violet skin. Before them stood Naira, her posture rigid with the formality of her position. When Elias entered, her composure faltered visibly, her markings flaring with a brightness that could not be suppressed. The eldest council member noticed immediately, turning crystalline eyes toward the human intruder. So, the elder's voice resonated directly in Elias's mind. This is the Earth commander who has claimed our princess's dreamtide. Naira stepped forward. Elder Vex, Commander Reed has not claimed anything. The dreamtide connection formed naturally, unprecedented but genuine. Irrelevant, another elder countered. The agreement with the Vortex Collective was established decades before your birth. One human cannot unravel planetary security arrangements. Elias finally spoke, his voice echoing strangely in the water-filled chamber. I've come to propose an alternative alliance. Murmurs rippled through the council as Naira looked at him with mingled hope and fear. The Vortex representatives recently arrived at Earth's diplomatic station, Elias continued. Their environmental requirements reveal physiological incompatibilities with Lumarian biology. This proposed union would cause Ambassador Naira physical harm. Elder Vex's markings pulsed with skepticism. Evidence? Elias activated a holographic projector, displaying the specifications Lieutenant Chen had secretly provided. These are the environmental modifications requested for Ambassador Naira's shared quarters with the Vortex representative. Analysis confirms these conditions would cause progressive cellular deterioration in Lumarian physiology. Horror spread visibly through the council as the implications became clear. The collective never intended an equal partnership, Elias concluded. They designed this arrangement to slowly eliminate Ambassador Naira while maintaining the appearance of honoring their treaty. Naira moved to Elias's side. Her markings aligned with his posture in unconscious synchronicity. The collective seeks to weaken our bloodline before claiming direct control of our gravitational stabilizers. One of the younger elders leaned forward. What alternative do you propose, human? Earth has developed its own gravitational technology, less advanced than the collective's, but sufficient with modification. Elias displayed additional specifications. I've secured provisional approval for a technology transfer in exchange for the mineral rights originally under negotiation. You have no authority to make such offers. Elder Vex challenged. No, Elias admitted. But I have friends who do. The chamber's communication array activated, revealing Director Harlow's stern visage. This is Director Elaine Harlow of Earth Union Command. While Commander Reed's methods are unorthodox, his information is accurate. Earth is prepared to formalize a technology alliance with Lumaria, effective immediately. Hours of negotiations followed, during which Elias and Nera stood united, their occasional unconscious mirroring of movements noted by the Council with growing interest. As discussions concluded, Elder Vex approached them privately. In 5 centuries, no dreamtide has formed between species, the ancient Lumarian observed. Our scientists believed it biologically impossible. Perhaps what's impossible is only what hasn't been attempted, Nera replied. Elder Vex's markings formed a pattern Elias now recognized as contemplative amusement. The Vortex representative arrives tomorrow. How do you propose we address this diplomatic complication? With truth, Elias said simply. Presented as an unprecedented opportunity. The following day, the Vortex representative, a gaseous entity contained within a pressure suit, hovered before the Lumarian Council. Its translator converted seething vapor movements into words. The collective will not tolerate this breach of agreement, it declared. Our gravitational protection will be withdrawn immediately. Your protection is no longer required, Elder Vex responded, activating a display of Earth's gravitational technology already being installed throughout Lumarian cities. But we offer something unprecedented, a 3-world alliance. Earth's technology, Lumaria's mineral resources, the collective's distribution networks. The vapor within the containment suit churned as the representative communicated with its distant superiors. Finally, it responded, the collective acknowledges the efficiency of this arrangement. 1 year later, Elias stood beside Nayera on the highest spire of Thalassia, watching triple moons rise above Lumaria's endless oceans. Their lives had transformed in ways neither could have imagined, Elias now serving as Earth's official ambassador, Nayera leading Lumaria's newly established interspecies diplomatic corps. The dreamtide grows stronger, she said, her violet skin illuminated by patterns that had become increasingly complex as their connection deepened. The scientists still can't explain it, Elias replied, lacing his fingers through hers. Something about complementary neural patterns. Nera laughed, the sound like water over crystal. Scientists never understand the most important things. Below them, in Thalassia's central plaza, Lumarians and humans moved among floating light sculptures that represented the historic alliance. Children from both worlds played together in shallow pools, some human children already learning the basics of light speech from their Lumarian friends. When I was assigned to escort an alien diplomat, Elias mused, I never imagined it would lead here. When I couldn't sleep alone in the darkness of an Earth base, Nayera countered. I never imagined I'd find home in a human's dreamtide. As twilight deepened, their joined silhouettes merged with the falling night. 2 beings from distant worlds who had discovered that across the vast cosmos, light called to light and souls to souls, creating connections that transcended the boundaries of species and stars. In the waters far below, their unified shadow rippled across the surface, neither fully human nor Lumarian, but something entirely new. Something with the power to illuminate paths between worlds that had always existed, waiting only for those brave enough to cross the darkness between stars to find them.